Hello, friends. My name is Matt, and I'm the youth and family pastor at Cornerstone Church in Marshfield, and I'm here today with your Cornerstone Connection, a daily devotional. So, on Wednesday night, I taught from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 15 to 22. And I got to say, before we get into that text, one of my favorite things about reading Jesus' life and hearing the stories and his interactions with people, in particular, his interactions with the Pharisees, is how they always want to ask him questions about rules and laws. And over again, what we see is that Jesus always brings it back to the heart, right? He always brings it back to the heart. Where is your heart in relationship to God? Well, the same thing happens in Matthew 22, 15 to 22. Let me read that for you. If you have a Bible, grab it, open it up, and take a look with me. And let me just show you again how Jesus is always looking at the heart over the rule, okay? And I'll state it in a different way here in just a bit. Verse 15 says, "Then the Pharisees went out and they laid plans to trap him," Jesus, in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. "Teacher," they said, "we know you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are." They're trying to flatter Jesus, even though they're trying to trap him, right? Verse 17, "Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, he said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." So they brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose portrait is this? And whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." When they heard this, they were amazed. So they left him and they went away. The end. All of a sudden, once again, there's Jesus by himself, easily defeating those who are trying to trap him and escaping their trap. It's so interesting again, you guys. The Pharisees and the Herodians, two groups of people back then that generally weren't ever unified, but they're unified over their dislike for Jesus and his popular following. And they come to Jesus and they have this issue of policy, right? That they're trying to trap him in. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? And it almost seems like this, I mean, it is. It's a really crafty question because it comes off as really a lose-lose situation for Jesus. And no matter if he says yes or no, he's going to lose. You see, if he said yes, it would seem that he's coming against the Jewish people, those who are oppressed by the Roman tax. If he said, yeah, go ahead and pay taxes to Caesar, it'd come off as he's against the Jewish people. But then, if he said no, he'd come off as being against the Romans, and he'd come off as an enemy of Rome. So it really was a crafty question, as they gave him this question that had to do with policy. But what is so beautiful about Jesus, like I just said before, he always cared about hearts more than rules. Well, what I'm going to say, and hopefully it sticks with you today, he always cared about people over policy. They bring him this issue of policy, but what we see in his response is he always brings it back to you and me. He always brings it back to people. He always brings it back to our heart. The first thing Jesus says is, give me a coin. And he says, whose image is on here? And they say, of course, it's Caesar's. He says, okay, well, it's Caesar's. So if it's his, then give it back to him. But then he adds this punchline, right? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Well, if the denarius is out of the situation, and it's no longer in the circle of people, who's left that could be God's? The people, right? And each and every human being, whether you follow God or not, is made in the image of God. It's been that way since the beginning. And so each and every person is God's. Each and every piece of creation is God's. And so what Jesus was teaching that day in this very interesting and crafty interaction was, I am always going to care about your heart over the rule. It's always going to be about people over policy. And he was telling the Pharisees and Herodians back then, you're trying to look so good and do all the godly and right things and do all the right policies. But you're far from God because your heart is far from God. And we can take that teaching as well today, friends. How often do we get concerned and worried about rules and policies? And we can forget about our hearts or the hearts of other people. We see time and time again throughout the Gospels That when it comes to policies versus people, Jesus is going to be way more concerned about people every single time. And we should do the same. Have a great day, friends. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.